When I came back to my family's cabin after 6 years away, I thought I was going to find dust, dead leaves, maybe a raccoon living in the chimney. Not a steel gate chained across my own driveway, a bright warning sign with my name on it, and a woman in designer boots screaming that I was trespassing on HOA property. That was the moment I realized something ugly had happened while I was gone. Somebody had looked at a quiet valley full of memories and decided absence meant permission. My name's Daniel Carter. I'm 38, and that land wasn't just real estate to me. It was the only place in my life that ever felt completely honest. The valley sits tucked between two long ridge lines, hidden so well you can drive half an hour through those mountains and never know it's there. You have to know the road, one skinny dirt track curling through dense pines, dipping through ruts, skirting boulders, then suddenly opening into this wide, breathless stretch of land that always felt bigger once you stood in it. In the middle sat the cabin my grandfather built by hand, rough timber walls, a stone chimney, a porch that creaked in the same old spots, like it had its own memory. As a kid, I knew every inch of that place. I knew how the morning light slid through the east windows and turned the dust gold. I knew the smell, after rain pine sap, wet earth, cold wood. I knew the creek on the western edge always running, never loud, just steady enough to make silence feel alive. My grandfather used to say, "Land doesn't need permission to be valuable. People just take time to notice." Back then I thought he was just saying old man stuff. Years later, standing at that locked gate, I realized he'd been warning me. Life pulled me away the way life does. My parents died, grief got heavy, and the valley stopped feeling peaceful and started feeling haunted. I never sold it, never gave it up, never stopped paying taxes. I just stayed away. 1 year turned into 2, then 3, then 6. Long enough for the world around that valley to change into something sleek and manicured and hungry. Developers started building along the ridges. I saw little hints of it from a distance. Zoning notices, legal mail updates I skimmed and tossed aside. But I never thought it had touched my land. Legally, it couldn't. The parcel had never been split, never sold, never shared. It was still mine, all of it, same as it had been when my grandfather bought it decades earlier. So when I drove back that morning, I expected the same hush I remembered. Same trees, same creek, same cabin waiting on me like a dog that never forgot its owner. Instead, I rolled up to a chain across the road and a polished sign that read, "Private Access Silver Ridge HOA, Residents Only." And standing next to it like she'd been born there was Patricia Benson. You ever meet somebody and know instantly they've never once doubted their own authority? That was Patricia. Perfect honey blonde hair that didn't move in the mountain wind, oversized sunglasses, white blazer, expensive boots sinking just slightly into dirt they had no business standing on. She held a clipboard like it was a judge's gavel. She didn't smile. She assessed me. "You can't be here," she said. Now, there are moments in life where your brain knows something is absurd, but your body still reacts like danger is real. My chest tightened. My jaw locked. I looked at the gate, then at her, then back at the sign with my own damn name typed underneath in red marker like I was some kind of problem resident. "I own this land," I said. She gave me this short, sharp laugh, the kind people use when they think reality is optional. "No," she said, "you used to." That was the first moment I understood this wasn't confusion. This wasn't paperwork mixed up in some county office. Patricia had a story in her head, and in that story, I was the intruder. She introduced herself like I should have been impressed. President of Silver Ridge HOA, then started talking in that smooth, icy tone people use when they've spent years getting their way through intimidation dressed up as professionalism. "We've maintained this property for years," she said. "Kept it safe, organized, exclusive." Exclusive. That word sat in the air like a bad smell. I didn't argue much after that. I cut the chain off. The gate got back in my truck and drove down my own road while she shouted behind me that she was calling security, the sheriff, the board, probably the ghost of Ronald Reagan, for all I know. Gravel popped under the tires. The trees thinned out. The valley opened up, and my stomach dropped so hard it felt like missing a step in the dark. The cabin was still there, thank God, weathered and gray and stubborn. But the land around it, my land, had been carved up by assumption. Along the western ridge stood rows of modern houses, all clean angles and matching decks lined up like they'd been stamped out in a factory. Several backyards sloped right into the valley. New fences cut past the old boundary markers I remembered from childhood. One deck hung out over what used to be my grandfather's orchard. Somebody had dug a fire pit into a patch of grass where my dad once taught me to split kindling. And right through the middle of the valley floor ran a paved walking path. It had solar lights. It had little decorative benches. It had plaques. Silver Ridge Nature Path. I just stood there hearing strollers rattle dogs, bark joggers' shoes, tapping pavement that had no right to exist. People were out enjoying my family land like it was an amenity package. Not one of them looked guilty. Most of them looked comfortable, which somehow made it worse. Patricia showed up 10 minutes later, calm as ever, arms crossed, watching me take it all in. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. That almost got a laugh out of me, not because it was funny, but because sometimes rage gets so sharp it circles back around into disbelief. "You built a community on stolen land," I said. She tilted her head. "We improved abandoned land." There it was. The whole disease in one sentence. Improve, organize, exclusive. People like Patricia don't think they're taking anything. They think they're upgrading it. And if your memories, your title deed, your family history happen to be in the way, well, that's just inefficient. That night I barely slept. The cabin groaned in the cold the way old wood does. And every little sound felt louder because part of me knew this was going to become a war. I spread out my grandfather's papers on the kitchen table. Tax receipts, surveys, deeds, handwritten notes in the margins. The man documented everything. He trusted the law, but he trusted paper more. At sunrise, I started making calls. County recorder first, then zoning, then the tax office. Then a real estate attorney named Lena Morales, whose voice had exactly zero patience for nonsense. I read her the parcel number, sent photos of the fences and the trail and the decks hanging over the property line. There was a pause on the phone, then she said very quietly, "Daniel, this is bad. For them." That was the first good breath I'd taken since I got there. By noon, I had confirmation from the county, no transfer, no subdivision, no easement, no access agreement, no right-of-way, nothing. Legally, the valley was exactly what I said it was. Mine. The trail wasn't just trespassing, it was unpermitted construction. The decks were encroachments. The fences were violations. Patricia hadn't bent the rules, she'd built a whole fantasy on top of land she never owned. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. Late that afternoon, while I was photographing one of the property markers near the creek, an older woman from one of the ridge houses walked down toward me. Small lady, gray ponytail, denim jacket, nervous face. She kept glancing back over her shoulder like she was crossing enemy lines. Her name was Ellen. She said, "I know who you are." Turns out Ellen had moved into Silver Ridge 4 years earlier. At one of the first HOA meetings she attended, somebody had asked about the valley, who owned it, why the land wasn't developed, whether the trail was legal. Patricia had told the whole room the property had been abandoned for decades and that the owners were gone for good. Ellen said Patricia sounded so certain nobody questioned it. But here's the part that mattered. Patricia also said there had once been some old Carter family paperwork, but it was irrelevant now. Ellen had thought that was odd. So she did something Patricia clearly never expected anybody to do. She kept copies of early HOA newsletters and meeting packets. One of them included a draft site map with a handwritten note from Patricia herself, "Proceed before title issue resurfaces." I just stared at Ellen. "You kept that?" I asked. She gave me this tiny shrug. "Patricia scares me," she said, which usually means I should save everything. I swear I almost hugged that woman. That note changed everything. Up to that point, Patricia could still pretend this was a misunderstanding, a records issue, an innocent mistake. But that line, "Proceed before title issue resurfaces," told the truth plain as day. She knew. Maybe not every resident knew, maybe not every board member understood, but Patricia knew enough to be nervous, and she built anyway. So when I confronted her again 2 days later at the trailhead, I didn't come back angry. I came back ready. She was standing there in sunglasses again, clipboard tucked to her chest, trying to project the same polished control. I let her start. "You've caused quite a disruption," she said. I handed her copies of the deed, the survey, the county confirmation, zoning notices, and then right on top, Ellen's newsletter with Patricia's handwritten note. I watched her face lose color. Not all at once, Patricia was too practiced for that, but her mouth tightened, her fingers twitched. Her sunglasses came off, and suddenly she looked less like a queen and more like a woman doing math in public. Around us, residents had started gathering. Word travels fast in neighborhoods like that, especially when rich people think their walking trail is about to disappear. "You lied to them," I said, not loud, just clear. "You built on land you knew wasn't yours, and you sold the whole neighborhood a version of reality that only worked if I never came back." Patricia tried to recover. This community invested in maintaining this space. On stolen property. She raised her voice. Abandoned property. And that's when Ellen, sweet little Ellen in her denim jacket, stepped out from the crowd and said, "That's not what you told the board in 2022. You could have heard a pine needle hit the dirt." Patricia turned so fast I thought she might snap in half. Residents started looking at one another. Somebody asked, "What 2022 meeting?" Another said, "Wait, you knew there was a title issue?" A third muttered, "Oh my God." That was it. That was the moment the valley changed temperature. Patricia wasn't the protector anymore. She was the liability. Surveyors came out the next week. County officials followed. Then local press. Nothing makes a county move faster than a property dispute involving an HOA illegal construction and a president dumb enough to leave a paper trail. For a while, I just watched the whole machine turn. Stakes went into the ground. Deck measurements got taken. Violation notices got issued. People who had waved at me from their back patios suddenly wouldn't make eye contact. Now, I could have gone scorched earth. Part of me wanted to. God knows, part of me wanted every bench ripped up, every light post yanked out, every inch of concrete busted and hauled away. I wanted the valley restored so completely it would be like Silver Ridge had never touched it. But anger makes one kind of point. Leverage makes another. So I made them an offer. The HOA could either remove every encroachment, demolish the trail, restore the land at their own expense, and deal with the lawsuits that followed. Or they could negotiate legal access and use rights directly with me at a price I set under terms I controlled with every boundary formally acknowledged and every violation corrected. That room went dead quiet when my attorney laid it out. Patricia argued, of course. She called it opportunistic. She called it punitive. She called it emotional. Lena smiled and said, "No, Patricia, this is what grace looks like when it's itemized." I still think about that line. In the end, the board folded. Fast. A lot faster than Patricia expected. Once people understood the trail could vanish and their decks might have to be torn back, loyalty dried up real quick. Funny how principle works when property values get involved. The HOA accepted my terms almost unanimously. Boundary fences got moved, decks got modified. The trail stayed, but not as theirs as mine, licensed, restricted, and paid for every single year. And Patricia, she resigned before the season changed. 3 months later, she moved out of Silver Ridge without so much as a goodbye. No farewell email, no final speech. No righteous last stand. Just a moving truck at dawn and a woman who had spent years acting like she owned the valley, leaving under the same silence she'd tried to steal from me. The strangest part was how I felt after. Satisfied, sure. Relieved, absolutely. But more than that, awake. Because the lesson didn't hit me when I won. It hit me when the quiet came back. Sitting on that porch one evening, listening to the creek and watching the light go gold through the grass, I realized something ugly about power people will absolutely call theft order if it benefits them long enough. They'll call entitlement community greed, improvement control, safety. And if you stay gone too long, they start talking like your absence erased your rights. It doesn't. Silence isn't surrender. Grief isn't abandonment. And just because somebody builds a fence around what's yours doesn't mean they get to keep it. My grandfather was right. Land doesn't need permission to be valuable. People just take time to notice, especially the kind who only notice value once they think they can take it. These days, I still sit on that porch in the evenings. The trail lights are lower now, warmer, less obnoxious. The creek still sounds the same. The pines still move like they're whispering secrets to each other. And every so often I watch Silver Ridge residents walk that path under a legal agreement with my name on every page, paying for the privilege Patricia once tried to claim by force of personality and a clipboard. That part, I'll admit, feels pretty damn good. So here's the question. If you were me, would you have torn it all down just to make the point? Or would you have done exactly what I did and turned their arrogance into leverage? When somebody in power crosses the line and then hides behind rules they made up themselves, what does justice even look like? Punishment, profit, or both? Tell me where you land. Was I fair, or should I have burned the whole fake little kingdom to the ground? And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a neighbor, or anybody who confused control with ownership, share your story too. I want to hear how you handled it.